Hell yeah. Appreciate y'all having me.
It's essentially like I'd say like a town hall. That's what we usually do. We kind of just talk about the subject, and Astral and I run a tight ship. I know that for a fact. So no, here's the thing, guys. Real quick before we get started, here's the rules up here. When you come up, if you have questions, make sure they're questions about the subject. Especially we got a guest here. Utilize that time, right? Ask those questions.
Feel free. We'll have. We got a bunch of questions for Matt too. As I've got Klaus up here. Thanks, Shane and Klaus, and then I got Vinny from Disclosure Team that's going to jump in, who all I think very highly of, and are great researchers and do their own work in their own right. So everybody, just give them a follow. Matt, we can just kind of get right into it. I have a question.
Cool.
Just with how you kind of got on this route of writing about UAPs, and that was it just recent with like the balloons and kind of what Rubio was doing, or like how did you get to kind of going specific on the UAP topic?
You nailed it 100%. It was the start of the year. I was just looking up my stories and then my Instagram. And if you remember, it was like what? End of January, the February. Yeah, let me put it this way. The Chinese spy balloon or whatever invading U.S. airspace really woke up the Senate. And you had lawmakers being like, they did all these classified briefings. And it was a couple weeks after that David Grush and his allegations came out. So that kind of hit at this perfect storm where Congress was already looking at reclassifying classified, Congress is looking at overhauling their classification system. Let me put it that way. And so that was dealing with the records from, Mar-a-Lago and then Biden's crib and Pence's place. So lawmakers were already debating whether we as a nation classify way too much stuff. So then you tack the spy balloon invading airspace onto that, and then Grush on the other end. It just became this perfect storm and basically gave me an excuse to ask every fucking U.S. senator about aliens, which was fun as hell, if annoying as hell.
So you asked 100, basically everybody, and you're going to be releasing all that, in the next coming weeks, and you've got those up. But if you could summarize it, I feel like you wrote about it today. Like, you might be disappointed. Like, is there a general theme or kind of a feeling that you got of like like people don't really know about this, care about it, or like what's the general feeling you got from that 100?
Basically, that we got like 80, maybe 60 ostriches. I think you all will be surprised because I was surprised at how many lawmakers were kind of aware of it, but then aren't going that extra step to actually look into it. Like, my thing is, I would have no desire to ever be a frickin' politician, but if I were one, it seems like the only fun is that you get in on the secrets. So the fact that they're not even inquisitive about this stuff really stands out. I think right now I'm looking at my list. We've only got 7 more senators on the Intel committee whose exclusives we have not posted at askapol.com. So that means I'm terrible at math. 21 minus 7, so I think 14. So we've already published 14 senators on the Intel committee. And yeah, in my list, which I put out, but I'll put it out again, we have 4 who are actively investigating. That's Chair Warner, Vice Chair Marco Rubio, Kirsten Gillibrand, and then Martin Heinrich, Senator from New Mexico. He's a little skeptical, but, he wants the investigation to proceed. The rest of them, there's like 5 who are aware of it, but aren't commenting. The rest, a lot of them just aren't even aware. What you're starting to see, especially after the David Grush testimony in the House, is now a lot of lawmakers can no longer say they're unaware, but they're seeing some headlines. Some are still making some jokes, which is interesting because the juxtaposition of this like very serious, well, for one, very serious allegations, not just about recovered craft, but that the federal government is lying to Congress about, and has these hidden SAPs or special access programs. So because that's part of Grush's claim, the second half of his claim, that really woke up a lot of people in Congress. And for me, as a congressional junkie, I've been covering Congress 17 years. I don't want to cover the freaking White House. Congress is the first branch in the Constitution. It's supposed to be closest to the people. And so kind of learning through this, just how uninquisitive our political class is standing out. And even how lazy they are and how little love they have for the institution kind of like breaks my heart, because what Grush is saying, and whether he's true or not, he's saying, hey, the federal government is lying to your fucking faces, Congress. And boom, ball in your court. And for many, they're just like, oh, there's a ball. I don't get it,
Yeah, regardless of what you think about the aliens or not, it's the SAPs, and just like you said, of like why you wouldn't. That's the point of being in that position, so you get to see that information.
And the fascinating thing that Senator Rubio, the vice chair of Intel, what he told me that really got me investigating was, he's like, we get a lot of these whistleblowers, but he goes, this one stands out because David Grush and his allegations were vetted by the intelligence community's inspector general, vetted, deemed urgent, valid claim or whatever, and then sent to Congress. So hearing that from Rubio, the fact that, hey, we've dealt with whistleblowers all the time, but this one stands out, that definitely put it on my radar. And yeah, again, it's just a shame that it's not on more lawmakers' radars. But I haven't released it yet, but there's an interview with Senator Bozeman from Arkansas. And he's interesting. And you kind of hear him asking me about it. And then at the end, he's like, people really care about this, right? So you could tell he's hearing about it from his constituents. So he's not versed in it. He's on ag committee and stuff like that. But you can tell because you all and this UFO Twitter community is being so loud, that, yeah, lawmakers are definitely hearing y'all, especially if you're if you live in Alaska, you have more power and clout when you ping your Alaska senators. Sure, ping them all, but when they see your zip code in their state, that really wakes them up. So here's a little tip. If y'all are writing letters, emails, or whatever to lawmakers, this is what I tell my interns and students, like, use any in you have. So like what? Grandparents retired in Florida. Boom, I got the Florida in. I can use that with those lawmakers. My parents retired in Arizona, and Michigan. So boom, that's my connection with those senators. I went to school in Georgia. First time I met MTG, I was like, hey, ma'am, I would have been your constituent if this was 20 years ago. I've given sermons in your district. That's me in a past life. As I told Josh Hawley, I saw the light and it was dark. But so, yeah, any in you have, if your cousins are in one state, that kind of gives you a little more clout when talking to those lawmakers, because what do they care about? Re-election, re-election, re-election. So any connection you have to their voters, boom, makes them definitely listen to y'all.
That's great advice. I'll throw it over to Shane and Klaus, man. Thanks again, Matt.
So, Matt, again, thanks for being here. And guys, hey, everybody retweet this space. Make sure we get other people in here and get this more interactive. And shout out to Wounded Warrior Project. Donate if you can. The other thing I was going to ask, Matt,
Yep.
You mentioned students. As someone who does what you do within journalism, how important is it to you? For example, I myself would classify, I'd say I'm a wish version of a reporter, right? Because the subject has no one taking it seriously, but you are. How important is it for people who are doing journalism to follow leads and go where that takes them, regardless of stigma? Because that's why we kind of get stuck in this loop.
I think I'll go a little different angle. Like, for one, I think a lot of reporters are pretty lazy. And I think, like, I hate even using the term the media, because, like, no, there's not a bunch of, like, editors and publishers sitting in a smoke-filled room deciding, like, oh, we're gonna do this. It's just, we're too inept for anything like that. And there's fierce competition within journalism, but there's just, within these legacy newsrooms. Well, so what? I used to cover, and I still do cover, drug policy, but used to be contributor at Playboy, um, Vice News, Vice News Tonight, and Rolling Stone. Covered cannabis and other stuff for them. Looking at how these legacy news outlets perpetuate this veiled fucking war on drugs in the midst of this fentanyl crisis is just insane. So, like, what? I saw Jake Tapper with Sanjay Gupta on CNN, and Tapper's like, well, you can find this fentanyl stuff now in Molly and these things. He's like, well, for my kids, I just say, no, you can't even test it. Like, don't even do it. Like that, just say no. Is that gonna fucking work, Jake Tapper? You dipshit. Like, literally.
No, that hits close to home.
Like,
it won't. So thanks for that.
So it's like that kind of thinking in these legacy organizations perpetuate the government line from decades and decades. And so here, like, what we saw that with our exclusive at askapol.com, we had our exclusive with the top Democrat on the House Intelligence, Jim Himes. And Himes was like, yeah, heard about Grush, but I'm going to give deference to the people at Arrow because they testified in front of our committee and said, nope, there's no craft, anything like that. One, I'm like, well, cool. I get that, Congressman Himes, but what Grush is saying is that those people are full of shit. So do a little bit more legwork to either show us, the public, hey, Grush is full of shit, or maybe open up your mind and, like, allow your thinking to actually, like, evolve into, oh, maybe some of these federal bureaucrats are full of shit, or maybe even some of these SAPs or special access programs were hidden from those people who testified, and so that's where people get stuck in these ditches or whatever, just stuck in these ruts. And yeah, here in Washington, we perpetuate a lot of bad shit.
Hey Matt, I loved your article just on, like, the state of the media right now. I think it was like last week or something. It was really refreshing to read
The one,
that.
what is it?
And
I'm embarrassed to be in the press corps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, damn, dude, like, this guy is self-aware. So yeah, that was cool. But I had a question.
Oh, wait, and
I was reading
where I sit, my seat, like, cubicle in the Capitol is in the Senate Radio TV gallery. So I'm literally up there with, like, all these people from CNN, all these people from MSNBC and Fox. So yeah, my seatmates did not love that one.
Hey, check this out. Yeah, I got problems with, like, the whole access journalism thing and the laziness there too. So I get that. But my question, I read your one the exclusive with I guess it was Cory Booker. It was kind of a short one. He's my senator, so I was really interested in that one. And I guess he said, like, his staffers were obsessed with it.
Yep.
And I just was wondering, like, how much influence, like, staffers and, like, their opinions on specifically, the UFO thing, how much that influences what the actual Congress members do.
It seems to have a ton of influence. And, like, the way Congress works is you have, what are they called? Like, different LAs, or legislative assistants. And each one, so if a member serves on, say 2 or 3 committees, well, they're going to have one staffer. So let's take Senator Gillibrand. So she's one of just 6 senators who serves on both the Armed Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee. So I could see her having, you know, someone who worked in the intelligence community being her staffer for intel, you know, because they would have to have the top secret clearance and all that. Well, then you can see maybe someone focused on, because she's all about her New York military bases. So, you know, probably she would have a staffer who was versed on that. And so those staffers, because the senators and lawmakers are out there, you know, basically being the face of their own business, you know, each lawmaker is their own enterprise. And so you sometimes have, well, so yeah, if that lawmaker cares about an issue, well, hey, everyone in the office is going to know that, you know, there might be a couple people more devoted to that than others, but it also flows the other way. If, because the lawmakers are fairly out of touch, if one of their staffers is like doing research, you know, putting it in front of them, those staffers can have a lot of influence with their lawmakers. And hell, they have a ton of influence on legislation because these lawmakers are not the ones writing these frickin' bills. I can tell you that. It's their staffers. And so, as you all know, language matters. And who was it? Our interview with Senator Mike Rounds, where he, what is it? He said, what was that language they used in the Schumer's UAP bill? Non-human intelligence.
Non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so talking.
Yeah, where he was like, well, there's a reason we put it in there. Yeah, that was an interesting one.
And that's where pushing him on that, because, you know, some of our followers had asked a poll. We did a Discord a couple weeks ago, and one of them asked that question. I was like, all right, well, hearing Rounds respond to it, I was like, oh, that actually seems like maybe you and Schumer actually negotiated on that language, where other parts of the bill, it was like the staff. And so that was interesting because he was like, yeah. Or when I asked, wait, does that encompass AI? And he goes, yeah, or it could. And so when it comes to that minutia of bills or whatever, it's rare that these lawmakers are in the weeds like that. I mean, some of them are. I'm thinking like Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, or even Jamie Raskin, you know, constitutional lawyer. He's nerdy as fuck in the good ways, you know. That's high praise from Professor Laslo over here. But so with Booker, going back to your question, it was interesting because I did follow up with him, and I was like, hey, what did you hear from your staff? And, you know, he hadn't heard, but that's something I'm going to ask when he gets back. And that's kind of going to be able, or that'll be the test, whether he's actually briefed on it by his staff, or whether he just got like one staffer who's really into it in the office, like mocks them or whatever. So we'll see. Office culture on the Hill, it's freaking weird. This whole town is freaking weird. But again, if you all keep at these lawmakers, yeah, because when you're writing those letters, those are going to the staffers. And so I'd even be curious what your correspondence is with Booker and his people. If I were you, maybe I'd send that clip to his office and be like, hey, your boss said this. We're curious. You know, has the staff brought it up to him? And I'd be curious what that letter back to you. If you do that and get that letter back, share.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I think that could be interesting. Oh shit!
Hey, real quick,
I just remembered.
Frank.
So what? Dianne Feinstein. So she's literally, I'm pretty sure she's got Alzheimer's or dementia. There was a story about the Capitol physician a few years back, or the Capitol pharmacist. And the pharmacist said that literally he writes a prescription, at least one, for Alzheimer's to a sitting member of Congress. And so watching her, and I've covered her for KPBS, San Diego's NPR station, Capital Public Radio in Sacramento, fuck, QED in San Fran. So like, I know her and have known her for the 17 years I've been at the Capitol. So now seeing her wheeled around, this isn't public yet, but I'll give you this exclusive. Feinstein, when I ask her about David Grush, it's so sad. She goes, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's brutal.
And it like breaks my heart, but shit, you're in the Senate, so I got to ask you. But literally, Dianne Feinstein hasn't done anything for the last year, maybe 2 years. So literally, her staff is all powerful, at least one or two of them, which is kind of scary when you think about it. And not the democratic system.
Isn't that kind of what's going on here? We got people controlling these UAP programs, SAP programs that aren't, checks and balances. I think, where do you stand on that? Where do you stand on corruption or stupidity with some of these people?
They're all fairly inept. Even like back when the Twin Towers fell for 9/11, there was people like, oh, Dick Cheney did it. He wired the buildings. My thinking was like, do you think there are people in this government smart enough to be able to do that for one, but keep it secret for two? And I'm just like, no, from what I've seen from all these people, like, sure, Cheney might have wanted to do something like that, but no, I don't. You have to have almost more faith in them to imagine them, Yeah, so I fall on ineptitude. As we start to learn more, I'll be able to have a better answer to that because, yeah, I mean, if there are SAPs hidden from Congress, then hell, in our exclusive with the vice chair, our first one, with the chair of intelligence in the Senate, Mark Warner, he surprised me because he's like, well, since he came to Congress, and I think he came in like 2009, maybe it was 12, but since he's been here, he says, so in the past decade, he says he's become aware of an SAP that Congress wasn't aware of. Now he says, oh, they forgot to loop us in, so he was deferential to them, but maybe that's why I'm not in Congress, because I'd be pulling a Jesus and flipping over all the goddamn tables in the temple if I found out that the federal government was lying to me as an elected lawmaker.
Well, do you find anything of a common denominator as to why some of these other, like, I know you've talked about other people have had, like, when they were governors or in another position, they had a UAP experience, and that's why now they're in their position now, they're motivated to kind of be more vocal about it. Like, do you find that, like, people who actually, like, believe in this stuff or have had experiences and are more prone to, be interested in it?
So because Congress is so lazy, and like, I just did a piece for Raw Story on it. Since the start of this year, guess, trivia time, how many laws have been signed by President Biden in 2023? Any guesses? The answer I just learned is 12. And one of them was commemorating a 250th anniversary coin for the Marines. And then another was renaming a VA hospital. So literally, this Congress, basically all they did was like not default on the nation's debt. But they've been busy and active with all these messaging bills. And this is so sad, but like in the Senate, they're just, most of the time, they're just in DC 3 days a week now. So they used to just fly in, vote it Monday night at 5:30. Now they're coming in Tuesday night, taking that vote at 5:30. Wednesday is kind of their only real hearing day and like big legislative day. So now you're having these senators with back-to-back hearings, or a couple of hearings going on at the same time. So the new schedule has really kind of constrained our time with lawmakers. But that said, when they get back, that's kind of my main question, because I'm curious for Chet, and especially with Luna in the house, because she was Air Force. I'm curious how, this became a passion issue for them. And it's curious because you see this wide range. There's some who are watching it, like what? Byron Dorgan. No, that's an old Byron Dorgan. He was a North Dakota senator like 2 decades ago. Sorry. But Donalds, he told me, he's like, yeah, of course I believe in him. Done. And so for him, like, it's so settled in his mind that it's like a non-issue, and he's got other stuff that he's focused on. So that's where, I was able to interview all 100 senators on Brush in the past, 2 months, month and a half, just because I kind of wanted to get that broad snapshot to see where they all are. And yeah, my first time ever interviewing each 100 goddamn senators on any issue. For the J6 stuff, I interviewed all 50 Republicans when the House was doing their special committee J6, because I was just curious whether any of them were gonna, or what. There's all these stupid comparisons in the media, like, oh, this is gonna be like Watergate. I was like, no, it's not. You couldn't fucking convict Trump in this Senate. And sure enough, when I talked to all 50 Republicans, only 8 of them were even gonna watch. So no, that is not no comparison with Watergate. And so yeah, this freaking Congress. But anyway, tracking down all 100 senators on this. For one, it was interesting because the first time many of them heard of this was me, which means y'all feeding us questions at askapoll.com. They're really hearing this straight from you all. And so I'll be curious how much they now investigate this. Booker is a great example. He was into it. He was joking with me, laughing, but then no follow through when I saw him 2 weeks later. So now when I see him after a month, we'll see if there's any follow through.
That's actually going to be really good perspective. And one of the things that I enjoy too on Ask a Poll was that not only that you get the raw audio of the questions, but then your perspective of I thought it was a really good couple of minutes where you were like, he said no comment, but did it mean no comment? I don't know, or no comment, or I'm not saying shit. To get that kind of perspective when you're there and to analyze it is really, I think a good way to listen to the analysis of it too. So I appreciate it.
And with all these lawmakers, so I have my own bureau, the Laslo Congressional Bureau, but interns call it the LCB. It's basically like a wire service where historically I would feed features and then even raw interviews and stuff to local NPR stations across the U.S. So covering all these lawmakers. Oh, and then I'm also on the board of the Regional Reporters Association. So it's my passion, informing local readers and stuff, local listeners. But so with that, covering Congress for so many, and I think I've literally filed from Washington for 47 out of 50 states for their local NPR station over the years. And so whenever I meet any lawmaker, like Rick Scott, first time I meet him, I'm like, hey, I was the correspondent for WLRN in Miami and WFSU in Tallahassee. Boom, instant connection. And so a lot of these lawmakers know me, and then some know me as Professor Laslo. And because I've been there 17 years now, I think I've been there longer than about 75 or 70% of lawmakers. And I always make sure, I did a piece for the Atlantic probably 15 years ago, but me meeting the freshman class at the airport where they're escorted by a Marine as they land and then walked out to their car. They never get a Marine escort again. But, when they're freshmen, they do that first day. So yeah, for 17 years now, I've been one of the first people these lawmakers see. Even if I'm not doing stories, I'm at their orientation, helping help Senator Ayotte from New Hampshire find the ladies' room. Like, she'll never forget that. When Ayanna Presley from Massachusetts was changing out of high heels into flats because her knees were killing her. Well, boom, I got to sit down and talk with her for 10 minutes, tell her about when I tore my MCL chasing Vice President Pence on a rainy day. I slipped on the marble because some jackass cameraman cut me off. So getting those connections with all these lawmakers puts me and us at Askapol in a really good spot, because even though I guess I have a reputation of being a little bit fucking gonzo, I also seem to be taken seriously by people who actually know me. So
Burchett called you normal.
I know.
He's like, we're normal.
I'm like, man, once you say it out loud, that means we're strange, bro.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to open up some of the questions to some of the community members who jumped up. Christian, what's up, man? How's it going?
It's going good. I'm just gonna ask one or two questions, and I gotta get back to work. But Matt, I was wondering if you knew if these people in Congress finally got access to a skiff with David Grush, and also, do you know? I've heard that none of these people in Congress and maybe even the Senate didn't get to see the videos of February. I mean, they got to see the balloon, but the other three, I heard that they were denied access to that. Do you know anything about that?
So yeah, let me take number 2. So I pushed, and I haven't released it yet, but I need to, and I'm going to be dropping these. Oh, the reason I wasn't, I think a former president got indicted last week, so did not plan on working 48 hours straight during congressional recess. But
man, I can't hear anything. I'm gonna have to jump back in because I can't hear Matt.
Yeah, jump back in. That's cool. We can hear him. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, so one interview that I've been sitting on is with, I already published the Lisa Murkowski exclusive, asking her whether she saw the video. Oh, so I guess Murkowski and Sullivan were given a briefing up in Alaska when they were there on the object or whatever was shot down there. What I pressed Murkowski on, and she was like laughing at me a little bit. She's like, dude, you don't know Alaska and like the wilderness at all. She's like, it's out there on this ice. It's hard to get to, so we like may never recover it. But what I asked her, based upon what I heard from our community at Askapol, was, well, did you see the video from the cockpit? And you can see, and you can listen to it. It's on our site. Her wheels are churning in her head. She's like, well, I didn't ask that. And I'm going to keep asking her that, because then she will ask it. So then I also pushed Senator Sullivan on that same thing. He was a little bit mind fucked, just like, oh, I didn't ask that question. And so I think I'm very intrigued on what we hear from that. I haven't asked more broadly than that on the other 2 objects, or 3 that were shot down. I've only been asking that about the one in Alaska. But yeah, let me know if you all hear anything, because it's not just a slogan, but we're literally your conduit to Congress. Because I'm running around the Hill, interviewing up to like 70 lawmakers a day, having the time to be doing the research you all are doing. So yeah, feed me stuff, make sure it's legit and vetted, because I do vet it on the fly. So don't make me look like an ass. So then your first question, whether they got skiff or Grush in a skiff, do not know. And I'm very curious about the timeline with Senator Rounds meeting with the head of Aero, Kirkpatrick, the last week of July. Because when I talked to Senator Rounds on the 13th, he was like, who? When I mentioned David Grush. Then when I talked to Gillibrand, on, I believe, the 19th, she said she was having a meeting with Rounds and she was going to remind him of Grush's name, but she's like, oh no, Rounds knows about it. He just doesn't know his name. So that's where, and then the next day on the 20th, I believe, and I did a post on this week when, it's our Armed Services Committee post. When Rounds, so on the 20th, Rounds tells me, non-human intelligence could include AI. Well, somewhere in there, so then it's the next week that he's meeting with the head of Arrow, but he literally wasn't up on anything. And like when I was talking to him about their UAP amendment, his amendment with Schumer, it was more connected with AI, it seemed. And talking to Schumer's office, they said, yeah, it was more, or that Grush didn't play a role in it. It was because of his promise to Harry Reid, and it was more focused on transparency. And so I'm curious whether Rounds called the meeting, whether Gillibrand set it up between Rounds and Arrow, and I'm curious whether Rounds is now getting curious either about Grush or just about these hidden SAPs, because he didn't seem, for one, that read in on it or that interested, again, on the 13th and then on the 20th. So that's where, when he had that meeting the week of the 27th with Kirkpatrick, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall of that. But to answer your question specifically, right when that was happening, Gillibrand, just like the last week they were here, Gillibrand said she was still working on setting up interviews, her interview one-on-one with Grush, and then she still wants to have a hearing with him in public, but then she also wanted the head of Arrow to sit down with Grush. So I don't think any of that had happened yet. It could be happening during August recess, but I think a lot of these lawmakers, like they say, it's constituent work period or district work period. Like my ass, like they're spending a couple.
Well, I thought it was interesting too. It did seem like a quick turnaround, and that was like all of a sudden he's like, oh, I don't know, nothing, maybe, possibly, and then all of a sudden he's talking about non-human intelligence after, because you asked Gillibrand too about it. You were like, well, these, he doesn't know about it. She's like, oh, we're meeting today, or she met with him, and then all of a sudden he's like in the know. He's like leading the non-human. He's like, yeah, we're using non-human intelligence, but it was like, damn, a week ago, bro, you didn't know nothing about what was going on.
So that's where I'm curious. And even, again, Rounds, he's a serious dude. He knows me as a serious motherfucker. So I like to think there's a little respect there. So, like, to have Gillibrand pressuring him on it, pushing him on it, but then me, like this serious professor, pushing him on it 2 or 3 times within the month. I'm curious if he's now curious about David Grush and the UFO question, because, and here's something, I haven't done a post on it, and I probably won't, because it's kind of hard to peg down, but I think, at least in the Senate, when they use UAP, they are not saying UFO. And look at our latest exclusive we dropped with Marco Rubio. He says, no, these issues are bifurcated. So his word, bifurcated. So what he's saying is the Senate is taking, it's just, there's a separation in the Senate. UAPs mean one thing, and UFOs are an entire different thing, including David Grush. That's not me. That's Rubio saying that. And so, because I've only been doing this, 6-7 weeks, pressing lawmakers on this, I'm just learning their language on this. And I think that's their lexicon, at least in the Senate. UAPs, which, again, why that Schumer bill, non-human intelligence, that includes AI. And his office told me point blank, this is not tied to David Grush. This is a transparency effort tied to the legacy of Harry Reid. Schumer promised in that. So yeah, push back on me, or like let me know if I'm hearing that wrong in some of these interviews. But I think as people like Gillibrand, Heinrich, and then Burchetnan, as these investigations are going forward, I think we're getting a little bit of a hardening in, yeah, again, what Rubio said, they are bifurcating the issues. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Because like NASA calls UAPs what, anomalous, but then like the intelligence community, their definition of UAP is different, right? It's like unidentified aerial.
I got a thought. Can I make it?
Do
I
it.
can tell you, Matt, about this same shit, man. So you don't even have to pay attention. Up in the nest. So how aware is Congress and the Senate of things like, so Scott Stapp, who works at the Northrop All Integration Anomalies office, right? Well, the whole point of that is to integrate Sentient, that program that looks for UAPs. He's literally leaving, what are they called? When you tell him good job on LinkedIn for Fitzpatrick, who's at Arrow, and Arrow's supposed to be looking for what now? I mean, the revolving door is ridiculous. Like the guy who's literally setting up a program from Northrop to do that stuff is besties with him.
Right. The wrong.
Are they wear that shit? Pardon my language, by the way. That's what I think.
I cuss more than you, bro. I learned how to swear from my two grandmas in the Midwest. So yeah, that's where I'm. Yeah, I mean, how much do you all think? Well, so that's where I'm curious. Like when the UAP definition came out, and like for me, again, being new to this, seeing that NASA has a different definition than even the Office of Intelligence, like DNI or whatever, that seems like a weird, like that's an anomaly.
You think it's confusion? Just
I
trying to keep
so.
us like they're playing ball and they just keep us, on our toes. Like, hey, we're playing ball, but and then using these words so that we're all lost in the shit.
Well, one thing that I think too is confusing to people is the regards with Arrow's plan or why they're doing the whistleblower thing. Because if you look at UAPs when it was aerial phenomenon, it was identifying, and I think that's where the focus is for NASA and Arrow, is to not look in the past of this confiscation of all of the information, and to focus on gathering the data of what is anomalous going forward. And so they have the reports of coming out of like 400 or 600 unidentified. The problem is, and I think where the loophole is that Arrow, it hasn't stated what is actually anomalous to where it's like extraterrestrial. So they don't have enough evidence to make that determination right now. And so there's like 500 reports that are probably in flux, which have evidence, like one video or one measurement of a UFO. And they're like, oh, we can't determine that. And there's no evidence that's going to be brought out now, from like past ones. So they're trying to, be the front for, oh, we're going to determine what is going to be a UAP, and we want to collect all the reports. And I think people are like, oh shit, like they're going to control that whole thing, and all this stuff that needs to be reported to the public is going to still be hidden from Arrow, and Arrow is the front for this, sort of reporting process.
And that's like 100%. Like the fact that the government was just kind of like, what are you talking about? There's no UFOs. We changed the name. It's like, you motherfuckers, like you gotta work a little slicker than that. Because that's the feeling I have. Like to take heat off it. And honestly, even the way you described it is accurate, because Congress put pressure on the Pentagon and NASA. Like, we fund the Pentagon at about like $1 trillion a year. And so the fact that, for one, a fucking balloon invaded our airspace and like wasn't seen by all this, again, trillions of dollars worth of gadgets. Like, one, what the fuck? Do better with our money. And so now that they're actually trained at the sky and having to report to Congress on all this stuff. I'm curious if they're going to be like, hey, we need new toys, we need more money, better sensors, all this stuff. And then I'll be curious, like whether they wag that dog. Because I think you're right. I have a hunch that you're right with they don't want to talk about the history and what is in the past. But hell, they don't really want to talk about what's happening in the present. At least not outside
with
of
the pilots, like the pilots that were in the hearing, Ryan Graves was talking about even now we still need a reporting process. Like, damn, we're talking about pilots right now don't have a way to report it. And, even commercial airline pilots, people that have it, so
right.
like there's just a missing link there. And Arrow's supposed to be the one who's collecting those. Same with Grush in the meeting that he supposedly had with Kirkpatrick, and them just like not reporting that, or like the misunderstanding that's there. They're like, there's just little things that I think, are there that are just like make things confusing.
Ooh, when they get back, I'm going to start pressing lawmakers on the aviation committees because, like you said, hearing from these commercial pilots, well, hell, FAA has to protect the skies. So yeah, that could be an interesting angle. And I think that's kind of what's happening here because Congress has not stood up and demanded these answers. You just kind of have like a few lawmakers. It kind of seems like, oh, it's their pet project, their pet project. It seems like now that the microscope has been on Grush and his testimony, it feels like more lawmakers are now taking it seriously, which I think will then result in these agencies having to, take us more seriously. And case in point there is Jamie frickin' Serious Impeacher-in-Chief Raskin, after the oversight hearing, he's all in and he's like, hey, I want these answers, probably gonna have to get people in the skiff. And so that was utterly bipartisan and like literally having, who was it? Oh, Adam Kissinger. He was like, look, it's all these Freedom Caucus people. He's like, these people are nuts. And I tweeted at him, I'm like, bro, so is that what you're saying about Raskin? Is that what you're saying about Gillibrand? Is that what you're saying about Warner? So yeah, you're seeing a lot of the normal routine BS Washington politics, like nip just outside of the issue. But as of now, it seems like the investigations have been really nonpartisan and increasingly so.
Why do you think that is? Why is this something you can see like being shrouded in politics eventually, or do you think it's going to stay generally the same?
So I'm watching and I think the California Senate race might be an interesting test case because Feinstein's retiring, and you have Adam Schiff for the Democratic primary. Adam Schiff going against Katie Porter. They're both raising gobs and gobs, millions and millions of money. Then you have Barbara Lee, Congresswoman. So, when it came to, I did a piece on this new push by progressives on expanding the Supreme Court. And, I like history, fun history. And so I was like, wait, there's now 50 progressive to even like non-progressive Democratic groups, just more moderate ones who are now pushing for court expansion. There's now more House members. I think Jamie Raskin now supports it. So like there's been movement everywhere on expanding the size of the court, except for in the Senate. So in the last Congress, there were 3 senators, 3 Dems who supported expanding the court, even though there's now all these grassroots effort and all these new House members supporting it. Senate has not changed. It's still the same 3. Ed Markey, Elizabeth Warren, and Hyde Smith from Minnesota. Well, so yeah, that's the current state of play in the Senate, same as it was last time. But when you look at California, that Senate race, all three of those candidates, Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter, they all now support expanding the court. And so it'll be interesting to see if this becomes an issue out there in that race. You know, like I talked to Schiff about it. We have his thing up on the site, nothing earth moving. But you can tell he still cares about the issue and has a lot of unanswered questions that he basically can't get answers to because he's no longer, booted off Senate Intelligence or House Intelligence. And so, have you guys seen this become an issue in even like a primary race? I think until it does, it should stay fairly nonpartisan. But every once in a while, you'll see those barbs against, probably more so against like Luna, because everyone kind of likes Burchett. He's like folksy comedian, yeah, Demsum. I learned while interviewing him that he's like BFFs with Jesse Jackson Jr.'s son, who's a congressman from Illinois. Progressive as progressive gets, Democrat, buddies with Burchett. So that's where even Adam Kinzinger is mocking them. I'm like, well, you're out of touch with this Congress because no one calls Burchett nuts. They call him nice, just with different opinions. So we'll see, whether those attacks stick, but it doesn't seem like they are because, again, now you got Jamie Raskin at the table with AOC, with all these other members, Nancy Mace. So for now, it's stayed above the partisan fray.
Hey, UAP Disclosure. What's up, man?
Oh, wait.
Hey, guys.
I was also, in addition to that,
Yo, go ahead, Matt.
But we also have the bipartisan silence. So if you think about it the other way, you have Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, they're united at the hip in being completely fucking mum on this, And so, yeah, that's where there's these interesting pockets. This does not fit into those normal hyper-partisan ways of Washington. And, yeah, you have nonpartisan fiefdoms on both sides.
Well, even your perspective on some people who are, in the position, I know, I forget who you were talking about. You were like, he's got some old people in front of him. Like, he's going to be a big player in a little bit, of, a voice where he is.
Oh, that was the youngin' on armed services. Who was that cat? Oh, Tom Cotton?
Yeah.
I believe him. Well, yeah, because some of these lawmakers are going to be in those seats for life. And that's where, Martin Heinrich, he's younger. Rubio's younger. And, Rubio promised not to run for Senate when he ran for president, but then, came back. So I kind of see him as a potential lifer. We'll see, yeah. And especially when McConnell leaves, it'll be interesting to see what the younger generation. I mean, because if y'all look at polls, I always do a triple take on this. I think it's 65% of Americans now believe that there's intelligent life out there somewhere. And that is a drastic change just in the past 3-4 years. And I think there's drastic change even in the past 2 years, according to Gallup's historic surveys. So, yeah, knowing that you all, and you all are very active, vocal, and well read and researched, knowing that you all are, you're heating up the water, that makes more lawmakers kind of necessarily have to look into it and take it more seriously than they would have. And again, that tape with my interview with Senator Bozeman, I want to put that out because he's got this curiosity, and you can tell he's looking into it, or it's on his radar, on the back burner, because he knows that some very vocal constituents really care about it. So yeah, lawmakers, as bad as they are, No, I'm not going to defend him. Fuck Congress.
Nice. UAP Disclosure, what's up?
Hey guys, thank you so much for the space. And Matt, I really love everything you're doing. I'm glad that we've got you on our side. I just wanted to mention, and maybe you've already written about this and I missed it, but will there be any articles coming out about how Arrow is sort of like got no email, got no website after so many days and no way to contact them? Is there going to be any scrutiny put on Arrow? Because I really feel like that's sort of Project Blue Book 2.0, and we really need to get that out to the public that they're not really doing the job that we need them to do. They're more focused on the balloons and the drones that they can identify. Yet when we do have something, there's never any real information. And I think that that needs to be really like put in the limelight. That was my first question. My second question is sort of around that. It's the fact that like there's really very little intellectual curiosity about some of this stuff. Like I'm an auditor, right? I've been an auditor for a major corporation for over 10 years. So I am constantly asking questions and looking for low hanging fruit. And, you know, when you see some of these videos that came out, like when we had Ames Sugg and Bray and Moultrie up there, you know, they showed the video that they couldn't pause, right? And I think it was Schiff who asked like, oh, do we have like any other sensors that we're looking at this? And he couldn't even answer that simple question. I mean, you can say yes or no, right? Like those little things, like there's no real follow up to those questions. And for instance, that one object, they said it was slow and we were going too fast. And we didn't even get a follow up like, did we turn around, right? Did we look, you know, try to get a better look? Like little things like that. Like Kirkpatrick was in front of Gillibrand and showed an orb that he paused in the middle of the frame was this orb. And he said, this is all the data we've got. And like, not even a question like, why? Why didn't we keep tracking this thing? Like what happened? How did we lose it? There's like so little intellectual curiosity. And then when Bray talked about the triangles, he was like, yeah, it took us 2 years to find out that this scope makes everything look like a triangle. It's like, it took you 2 years? What the hell? I mean, people should be looking through that thing every single day. How did it take you 2 fucking years to figure that out? And then not just that, you say it's an unmanned aerial vehicle. Where did it come from? Whose asset is that? Why are unmanned aerial vehicles swarming our Navy and nobody's really asking questions? Right. It's just like, yeah, they figured it out. We'll let them do their job and they'll let us know when we need to know. But I really don't think that's the case. I think they're just kind of throwing bullshit on the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think that that really needs to be highlighted, right? And if somebody's going to do it, I think you do an excellent job. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, guys.
When I'm at, I feel like all these, I mean, because you all know about the revolving door and that problem where, you know, people from industry, like what is the example? FAA, like the people at the FAA probably came from working for American Airlines or United or whatever, ... With this, it's like there's definitely been like a giving of a pass to them. What I'm curious, and especially because Arrow was just recently started and funded and all that, I think we're going to especially see from Gillibrand, we're going to see her senatorial impatience come out. And I don't think she's going to take any bullshit, but she also seems to have a positive impression / working relationship with Arrow and Kirkpatrick. So that's something I also want to explore. Like, fuck, she was out of town. She left Washington when his statement dropped on Grush. I'm like, damn it, that's when I wish I had access to lawmakers, because now I'm curious if her tune has changed. When it comes, and we'll see, I'm curious what the Senate Intelligence Committee has. And again, this is why Gillibrand is kind of the most interesting to me, and Rounds might be becoming the most interesting or becoming more interesting, because Gillibrand is on the Senate Intelligence Committee, but then she's using her perch on the Senate Armed Services Committee to do the investigation. What I've seen from more of the people on Senate Intel is they're more mum because they're talking about, or they don't want to talk about classified information. So that's where Gillibrand kind of seems like a little bit of a bridge between the Intel community and the classified information and the disclosure that folks want. And shit, it seems like the military needs. So, especially as more lawmakers are getting this on their radar, I expect them to start demanding more answers. But yeah, Arrow, yeah, the fact they don't even have a freaking website and stuff. I doubt, yeah, Congress is going to stand for that much longer. But we'll see. I guess Gillibrand said they're going to be dropping a new report in January, probably. Like, what? Y'all don't even trust those reports anyway, right? Like, those are already super lukewarm. So, yeah, we'll see. I think they're going to have to get their act together sooner than later, especially now, seeing that there's pressure from both the House and the Senate on this, but not much hope.
Yeah, I think just the next hearing too of what we could be looking at in terms of the witnesses or the people who are called and what we're looking at. I mean, it would be ideal to get Kirkpatrick and Grush in the same room, you know, and ask them questions all together and to figure a lot of this stuff out.
If you do get to ask them questions, just ask them where the NDAs are. A lot of people signed a lot of NDAs that are being held to them, and it says a lot of things, and they have to have them to bring them out to say, you can't say that, but where are they? The nuclear incidents. So they're all been signing these things. So why are they not looking for those that tell you where everything at?
That would be interesting. I'm writing that down. Because who would the Pentagon
essentially
ultimately
this
have?
is what I know exactly. Someone does, because they're being held accountable from the nuke incident. And I'm going to say, was it Maelstrom? He was made to sign it, but a lot of these other individuals that say they're supposedly, don't even count that. Just count the ones that are coming out now saying, I was told to sign an NDA. And they keep telling me, look for those. They're somewhere. And I sure as hell don't know what I'm doing. I'm sure you do, though.
That, and again, those are probably like super classified, and that even, it wouldn't be HIPAA, but because that's personal information. But then
Congress
again,
and Senate, but they should be able to get that shit.
That's what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm going to press them on that. That is, yeah, that'll be interesting. And I think you do kind of see Gillibrand and some of the others like doing this delicate dance with Arrow, because like on one hand, they need him. You know, he's got the access to the information. He's supposed to be investigating, you know, their will. And so I think for now they're giving a lot of deference, just because like he's still setting things up, it seems, et cetera, et cetera. I think again that senatorial impatience is going to start showing itself pretty quickly here, and like just the way the Hill works. It seems like the Senate investigation, while slower, while more behind closed doors, it seems like that one is being taken more seriously than the House one, just because the House is the House. But if the House finds something, well, you know, that'll be front page news no matter what. But I think anyone like really watching this issue and like super curious about it, they're kind of betting on the Senate to carry their water. I mean, because Gillibrand, what she says is she wants to have like all those people in that initial debrief article with Grush. She wants Grush to testify openly, and she wants a room full of people who can, or at least a dais full of people who can corroborate Grush's testimony. So I think that would be interesting, because the House, they went a little broader, you know, brought in a little more history. And so you can almost see those two investigations as different sides of the same coin. You know, not purposefully, but it seems like kind of playing out that way, where they're making the broader case. kind of saying like, look, this is so freaking common. Look at all these pilots, they're not alone. And Gresh is like, yo, there's 40 other people I've talked to.
Also, in the thread, I went ahead and posted and added you on Twitter. Basically, Captain Solace is the one. He talks about the NDAs, a lot of these other individuals. The other thing is, I'm curious. From the start, there's paperwork and it talks about CIC files for Roswell and all of these. That doesn't just get burned, right? The counterintelligence files for all these and so many witnesses. And maybe is this the disconnect between researchers and reporters because they don't know enough about that? Or is it just, that's what I'm curious about.
Reporters, we suck.
Not you, not directed at you.
Oh, no, I always say we suck.
Not directed at you. No, I meant directed at like mainstream media. So like they don't, some of the important things to ask for would, these type of things. You mentioned it earlier. We're here starting fires and we're loud. Do you think that's a big disconnect because you want to be able to ask the right questions?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes, us reporters
be in this subject, trust me, it's for loons.
Well, but us reporters, we often are following, for one, what our editors are passionate about. But then we do honestly follow lawmakers. But I think that's kind of why we're getting such shitty coverage because we have a lot of shitty lawmakers these days. My big overall complaints about Congress is that instead of what the founders envisioned as an internally focused, serious institution that, they wanted policymakers to come. So here's a little Professor Laslo for you. When the founders gave us 2-year terms for House members and 6-year terms for senators, that was fucking radical. Of the 13 colonies, only one had biennial terms. 2, I believe, South Carolina and Rhode Island, they had 6-month terms. The rest of the colonies all had 1-year terms. So it was like this radical compromise to give House members 2-year terms. As my mentor at Hopkins, Doug Harris says, well, those 2-year terms had collapsed. They're non-existent. If you're sitting there on election night watching one of those speeches, who are those lawmakers talking to? They're talking to a room full of their fucking donors, basically saying, hey, no, you just maxed out for this cycle, but think about maxing out for the next cycle too. So that space that the founders envisioned for lawmakers to come to Washington and really, study issues. Because if you were a Southern farmer, well, hell, now you might have to learn about maritime law with Canada and, the lobster fishing industry and vice versa. But so today we just have lawmakers shooting fucking YouTube videos when they're supposed to be asking experts serious questions. Yes, I call it this new era of pop politics, which is killing us all. And I think that's why the media, we're getting punished so brutally by the public. Literally about half of the public doesn't think we're just fake fucking news. Half of the public thinks we're actively lying to them. And so this is natural shit show of shitty lawmakers who are only focused on re-election and unprincipled and just want to dunk instead of passing sound policy, coupled with clickbait driven press corps that's been gutted because we didn't fucking see the internet coming. God damn, I get depressed.
Matt, let me stress too, I wasn't throwing shade at you.
Oh, no.
I was everybody going to clip that shit and retweet it like I'm throwing shade at Matt. That wasn't directed at you, just to be clear.
Oh, no. I get money from mainstream media clients. I critique myself hard.
Look, there's a reason I reached out to you on LinkedIn and stuff and tried to connect with you because, like I said, I'm some second-rate UFO reporter, and I think it's cool that reporters, journalists, are starting to take notice of this shit because that's what we need. You don't need some loon like myself trying to talk about the subject to bring people on board.
Well, this loon has to bounce This has been awesome. Really appreciate you all thinking of me. We're askapole.com. Check us out. Subscribe. You can subscribe for free. Or if you're feeling lucky, you can do a paid subscription to support our work. Again, we're going to be dropping these exclusives with each 100 U.S. senators by the end of the month, or by the time Congress is back. So by like the first week of September. But yeah, reach out to me. Follow us on Twitter, Ask a Poll, or follow me at Matt Laslo. DMs are open, and as my students know, if I don't respond within like either 10 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, feel free to like ping me again and re-up me if you haven't heard from me in 24 hours, because my DMs are fucking crazy, y'all.
Hey, Matt, before you leave, man, this is Experience. Peace. Would love to reach out to you. I'll shoot you a DM. I'm right here in Navy Yard, a few blocks away. Okay. So I would love to chop it up with you offline. But thanks for what you're doing. You're very boots on the ground. Sound clips are much appreciated. I just like the fact that you're getting people in very candid conversations. I don't know, you following them upstairs and on elevators and shit. Right. If you follow them in the bathroom, stuff, whatever it is, you're getting a clip from. It's good to hear these politicians off camera, not in a press conference, and you can kind of check the vibe of if they're really, serious about this shit or not. So just keep doing what you're doing, man. You're probably one of my favorite follows since this thing started. And started heating up. So I'll shoot you a DM, man. Like I said, I'm a few blocks away here in Navy Yard. We can chop it up offline.
Appreciate you and what you do. And yeah, if anyone needs, I think I'm easy to find on Signal or WhatsApp. And if you can't, DM me and let me know that I'm not easy to find on those, because I should be. But yeah, appreciate you all.
Yeah, dude. Thanks, Matt. And we'll have to
all your information in thread as well.
Sure. We'll do this again, man. Thanks. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, ping me. All right. Be well, y'all.
Good to talk. Thanks.
Hell yeah. And thanks, Shane.
Sticking around. What are we doing? We
awesome. Yeah, we can keep the discussion.
Well, here's the thing.
For like 10
yeah,
more
I would
minutes
recommend this. If it was such a good space, I recommend ending it and starting a new one. That way people can have that to listen to, because if it all goes to hell afterwards or it's super long, you know what I mean? That was perfect. And I recommend ending that, starting a new one, because who knows what can happen next without professionals leave.
No, we're going 8 hours. Marathon space.
Well, we used to do that. It makes it hard to listen and scroll through, man. It's like you scroll through and it's 2 hours. I'm like, oh shit.
No, I can't go more than usually 3 hours anyway. But yeah, if you guys want to say anything, closing people, thanks everybody for coming to the space. Obviously, it was a great conversation and discussion. Matt's super cool. We'll get him in here another time as well. Great information. We'll post the links. This is recorded, so if you jumped in, you can listen back to it again. But yeah, Klaus, did you want to say anything? And Shane, too, anybody else wants to, before we close it out?
I was just going to say, Matt's fucking rad. That was really cool. Enjoyed it.
I was going to say, thank you guys for being here. Just donate to Wounded Warrior, and that's all I give a shit about. Matt was cool as hell, and it's cool to have actual reporters take this shit seriously, right? And after parties at the Juan's house, he's got pizza. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, somebody wants to throw up space, everybody can jump back in there and keep the discussion going. And if you want to listen to it again, it's recorded. So got spaces coming up as well for the next couple weeks. So pretty excited about it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Later.